Welcome back to Chilli Pod, guys. This is episode 2, and we are Yasmin and Jess. Our topic of the day is hobbies and children, which sounds a bit creepy, but but yeah. Okay, so Yasmin, maybe let's kickstart with talking about you and what you think music did for you as a child. Like, how do you think it left an impression on you?
It was only maybe like in my later years of adolescence that I thought, okay, I actually love this, and it offers like a bit of escapism from academics and from life at school and home. I started off with piano and clarinet, and it's just always been a really important part of my life.
Do you think that it was the actual music, or was it the people, like the community and the people that you met, like your teachers, that helped you with that? Like, what do you think played a more important role in making you feel, I guess, good as a youngster?
Yeah, I think when I was younger, it was more about being a part of a community and being in like these different ensembles and groups. Made me feel a part of something. So yeah, first it was just a hobby, a bit of escapism. The most important part to me looking back is the role models that I was introduced to through doing music. So yeah, all my music teachers inspired me so much. And just seeing that they valued more than just like my academics. So other benefits I found from my music lessons is it boosted my self-esteem, because I had this teacher outside of academics that was like really rooting for me and really wanted me to learn and do better and come back each week having learned the stuff they taught me. And also it taught me discipline, and because I would have to work at it really hard, put the hours in to get better, especially like when it came to like exams and tests. It pushed me to constantly improve. It taught me social skills, because I was going to like out of school clubs where I was meeting lots of different people from all over, and having to like mix with lots of people at a young age outside of school was always really useful for a child. Those were just a few of benefits that I found. Maybe not so much growing up, but definitely now looking back, I can see how much it benefited my life and the person I am today.
Yeah, I totally agree with that about my hobbies as well. And I think that what hobbies give you is different sorts of mentorship that, you know, you can't find from just having like a small community, which is what most people have now, where like we've spoken about, you know, before, people used to live in really large communities where they actually knew the people that they lived around, whilst now we're quite isolated. And so children had more than one or two adults to look up to. And by having a hobby, you probably have a teacher, someone that is educating you, and you probably look up to them because they're good at the thing that you want to be good at. And that can be really valuable, because if you admire someone older than you, they can have a real capacity to help you and to really allow you to flourish. I think that hobbies can solve a lot of problems, to be honest. But it seems that hobbies are becoming less and less popular. I don't know if that's true. What do you think?
Did you also find that you met a lot of role models through doing sport and tennis in particular?
Yeah, like I'd say my tennis coaches were like the fun uncle kind of in my life, because I don't have any family that lives in England other than my actual family, like extended family. So being able to have fun and talk about different things that I couldn't talk with my parents about was cool. I felt very like relaxed and open, and felt like they were like always looking out for me, and just different people that I could learn from and have fun from. But they were adults, which is good, because it kept like they were still leading me in the right direction, you know. So yeah, I look back on those times with fondness, and I still think that having mentors in your 20s is so important, and you can just get that by even just, you know, booking anything and having a teacher, even if you're paying like £10 for it. At least if you're having someone that's better than you at something that you want to be good at, it just gives you a nice relationship, I think. So some of the stuff that I wanted to talk about today is by Gabor Maté, which is one of my idols, speaking of mentors, and the stuff that he says about kids growing up, and that how, because we were brought up, like before we used to be in these massive communities, like I said, kids used to look to these other adults for like advice and guidance, and all the only people that they trust and look up to were adults. But now that's shifted to kids. If they don't have that support from their two parents, which is a lot of pressure to put on the two parents, then they resort to looking at their fellow friends as their role models, which explains why kids, are getting into a lot of stupid shit, like, gangs are developing, and like why kids start using drugs if their friends are, because we don't have those robust communities anymore where there is a like plethora of adults kind of that that kid is able to look up to. They might see one or two examples, and that's not really a good sample size. That's not really a lot. So because of that, the child then looks to the peers for support, which then creates an even bigger separation between parent and child. So then the parent gets even more kind of, oh, like, why you're separating from me more, and they kind of become maybe a bit more aggressive in their approach, which drives the kid even further away, because no one wants to respond to, that kind of aggression. But so this dynamic gets created where we see like the separation of parent from child because of this, and the kid is obviously ends up doing stupid stuff because they don't have the role models that are leading the way, and another interesting thing that he said is that the first 3 years are the most important, and if you do the first 3 years right, you're chilling. But if you mess those up, you'll be making up for the rest of that child's life what you weren't able to give them in those first 3 years. Isn't that interesting?
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
He says that parents, like a lot of parents, are taught that, when the child is crying and when they're angry, don't attend to it, because you've got to teach them, right? That's how that they need to, learn how to get through it. That they shouldn't do that. It's not the right behavior. But what he's saying is that signaling is teaching the child a conditional relationship. I will only love you when you are happy. If you act like this, I won't love you. And so the child then sees that emotion is a bad thing, because when they get angry, which is a natural emotion because we have anger circuits in our brain, humans are meant to be angry. This is not something that should be denied. Then it says when I'm angry, then I don't get any nurturing. I don't get anything. I get actually isolation. So then throughout my life, I'm going to carry this with me, and I'm going to repress all my emotions, because emotions is what drives people away.
That's so interesting. But it's been like, what is the solution? Like, is that to say that, you should respond to happiness and sadness in the same way? Or I guess you should definitely respond to it with the same amount of attention and love and care. But then at the same time, how do you teach your child resilience and how to self-soothe and how to learn and support itself? Because
parents think that the child doesn't understand. But the thing is that wiring, that functioning of being explained to you, look, I know that you want the ice cream, but today, like, you just can't have it. But another day, we'll be able to get it, and that's okay. And it's fine that you're, upset about it and whatever. But I'm still here, but we just can't get the ice cream. It's not about like accepting all the like wants. It's about accepting the emotions, I think. And when you don't accept the wants, then you develop resilience, because the child won't get everything that they want.
I guess that kind of leads on to the idea of like, to what extent do you have to treat a child like an adult and explain things to them? Because that, like, what you're saying sounds like the stuff that you say to an adult, and obviously it's a child, they're not going to understand. You've got to treat them with a certain amount of like, obviously, like, care and understanding that they're not going to be as receptive to these things as adults.
I agree, and I'm not a parent. I have no idea, I don't remember what it's like to be a child. I don't know how much the child is able to internalize, but judging by how much emotional stuff we carry, I'm guessing a lot. Like, even if, I think a mistake in our society is that we treat children as if they're stupid, when I don't think they are. I think there's a reason that kids, when they're 7, 8, 9, if their parents are getting a divorce, there's a reason that they're able to remember all those emotions, and then when they're explaining them as an adult, they're explaining it as an adult. Do you know what I mean? But all of that happened as a kid. And also, there's this Instagram page, I think I've sent it to you, where this woman, she takes videos of her child, and things that she does, like when the child starts crying, like how she speaks to them, and she literally speaks to the child like an adult, but in a very like obviously like simple way, but says
How
like
old was this child roughly?
2.
Like, okay.
Very young, can't walk, like very young, and they'll be playing, and they're taking turns, and the child doesn't want her to have a turn. The child just wants to play on its own, and then they're putting water into a cup and then spilling it out. That's the game. And then she takes the cup, and then the child starts crying, I want to have a turn. She's like, I know that you want to have a turn, acknowledgement of the emotion, but it's mummy's turn now. Like, I'm going to have a turn. Is that okay? And then you're going to have it. Like, and then the child actually, I don't know if I've said you this, and then the child, like, actually, you see the response. They're upset, but they kind of get over it. It's weird.
Like this balance of like, you should treat your child like a child and allow it to be naive and innocent and learn things for itself, and allow it to just, I don't know.
But what do you mean by allow it to be naive and learn things for itself?
I guess to not expect that a child is gonna like understand an adult's boundaries and expectations and reality.
But then,
like,
yeah, I get you, but they're not. Aren't they? The adult's role is to teach the child, right? That is the role of the parent, to guide the child to be able to be an adult. And what other way is there really to do that? Like, because think about the alternative. What most people do is shout, Don't do that. Why are you doing that? If you do that, this will happen.
It's so true. I feel like parents are always being told, like by books and I don't know, people like experts in the field, that you should teach your child to understand like punishment and reward, and that's how they'll learn things. But you're right, maybe if you just explain things to them, then there's no need for either of those things.
Yeah, I think anything conditional affects a relationship, Like I wouldn't say to you, if you don't do this, like, shit's gonna happen.
So in an ideal world, rather than shouting and threatening a child, what would you do if a child is in a dangerous situation or doing something like bad enough for a parent to think that that's the only solution? Because like in those situations, just going up to them calmly and saying, you shouldn't be doing this, like this is what you should be doing, isn't going to work.
Even if when we're like adults now and we're trying to speak nicely, we still trip up and we still make mistakes. I think the purpose isn't for perfection. The purpose is, if you shout, it's gonna happen. Everyone does that. Everyone gets angry, and you will make the child feel shit. But the reality is that children get shouted at every day, and no one acknowledges it. But what if you shouted, and maybe you did it by accident, or maybe it was just, maybe they're about to fall into a river. Okay, that's completely different. Obviously, don't shout. But then after you say, look, I know I shouted at you. I didn't mean to get angry at you. It was just I was worried about you.
That is just the best way to earn respect from your child, which to me is the most important thing a parent can do. If your child has respect for you, then you've done something right. But there are so many parents, I feel like, might do the opposite and actually be negative all the time and then only praise when it's really, really, really good. And that just does not work. Yeah,
and then it reinforces the I only care about you and I love you when you do something really good. So you better keep holding yourself to that high standard, because if you're normal, it's not good enough. Which is, I think that's the challenge of our society in different aspects. It's that we don't accept someone in their normal state. It's like, everything's very conditional, and like because of the whole productivity thing, it's like we want we always are looking at the potential. And, you know, I'm guilty of this too. And that's because it's in me as well. I don't accept myself fully in this form. There's so much I want to be doing. And I say that I'll accept myself in that form, but obviously I won't. It's just, it's a fantasy, a delusion, you know?
Yeah, I was having a conversation recently with a friend about role models, and she was saying that all of her role models were academic, and they were just her teachers at school. But I think I don't know if this is just based on my experience and what your thoughts are on this, but I think it's really important to have role models aside from your school, aside from your parents, like you said, a greater community of people that believe in you and root for you, for completely separate reasons to like mainstream priorities. She asked me because for those of you that don't know, I am obsessed with cooking and food, and she was like, so how did you get into cooking? And I was thinking, like, what I was really trying to think, because I couldn't really pinpoint it, and after a lot of thinking I thought, I actually think it's the school chef we had at school that just firstly loved me and really cared about me as a person, and then I was inspired by what she was doing, her cooking, and I was trying to copy her, and I wanted to ask you firstly your thoughts on that, but also, do you think that, I mean, this is a bit of like a chicken and egg question, but do you think that you have like a passion for something and then a mentor will guide you, or is it important to have the mentor first and then they'll like inspire you into a passion or hobby? I mean, I guess it can be both ways, but what was your experience?
Good question. I think for me it was both. I think both kind of fed off of each other. Like, I loved tennis, and then I got a good coach who I got along with, which then made me love tennis more, which then made me get closer to my coach, and it goes on and on and on. Not everyone prioritizes academics, and I think that's just because in our world that's what was given the most concentration. So for you want to find value in yourself outside of that, because everyone around you was only giving you value for that. So that's why it's important for you. But for some people, I think school's a great place to have a mentor and someone to look up to. I would say that some teachers at school also I really looked up to and I thought were so cool, and I would go to for advice, and I thought their lessons were great, and I really looked up to them as people, like how they acted and stuff. But obviously we all want a bit of variety. Like, school doesn't right now encourage creativity that much, I think. So it's good to fuel our creativity in other ways, and so it's nice to have a hobby outside of that fuels that. That's why I think you think that is the better way, you know?
Jess, did you know that a child's role model is very influenced by their demographic? So just simply looking into like male and female children, more boys are looking up to famous personalities such as YouTubers and sports people, and then girls are mainly looking up to people that they have more direct contact, such as their mum and their friends, which I thought was really interesting. I've also found myself gravitating towards female role models in all areas of my life. Is that something that you also resonate with?
No. Most role models in my life are male. I don't know why. I don't know why, but I've always had male teachers. I don't know if that's just a coincidence though. I don't really have much to like say on that because I don't actually know if it meant anything. But I think the thing that you said before about males tend to gravitate towards the YouTube and the female, whatever, it's statistically proven that males tend, obviously not always, tend to be more success orientated and like, you know, career and like money driven, sort of like they want to progress further, whilst females, which makes sense as to why they're aspiring to people away from them, because they want to go in that direction, if that makes sense. Whilst females tend, if we take the whole world, tend to be more nurturing and like be, you know, more empathetic, and that requires more people skills, and so they relate to the people that they can actually connect with around them.
I think for me, I've gravitated towards female mentors because, like you said, like from my experience, they've been more empathetic towards me, and just in general, that means that if I think differently to them, or if I communicate differently, or have different ideas, that's something that they find more easy to understand. Whereas from my experience with like working at the moment in a very male-dominated team and company, and just my experience with like male teachers and music teachers and whatever growing up, I've found that if I don't think the same way as them, they think that I'm wrong or I don't understand, which has been such a frustration for me. And I don't know if that's just me and my experience, or if that's more widely shared.
I wouldn't say that that's my experience, but I would believe that a lot of people would have gone through what you've gone through. Like, it doesn't really surprise me, and it makes sense to me why you've, because of your experience and like in school and stuff like that, even with, you know, teachers, why you resonate more with people that are more similar to you. I don't think that's an unnatural thing, that we connect with the people that remind us the most of us, but also maybe are the future version of us that we, you know, aspire to be, who we look up to. So they're always going to be similar to us. We're not going to aspire to someone that's completely different. It just doesn't really make sense. Difficult with these generalizations and, like, you know, people, because everyone is so different and everyone has their own set of masculine and feminine characteristics, no matter which gender they are, that it's difficult to just, you know, say that that's just the way it is, because there will be plenty of men who exhibit a lot of feminine characteristics. They preside more than their masculine ones, who you'd probably get along with great, because you have a lot of feminine qualities, you know, those really dominate highly in you, and that's what I think that's what you connect on. That's who your role. Those are the values that your role models have. And again, feminine does not mean that only females have them, and masculine does not mean that only males have them. Everyone's on a spectrum of these qualities, and the reason that they are called masculine and feminine, I don't know, but that's just the way that it is.
Yeah, because I was giving you an example recently of a female person in my life that was trying to explain to me like the directions for somewhere, and because I didn't know every single street name, to them it seemed like I didn't know my way around and that I was stupid or that I was uneducated or something. But actually it's just because my brain doesn't work in street names, and I know exactly how to get everywhere based on like visualization and whatever else. Yeah. But it's just different ways of thinking things, but that lead to the same result. And people that understand that and are open-minded to that are people that I resonate with, whether they're men, women, or anything else. But back to those fascinating statistics about how kids look up to different role models based on their demographic, whether that's their gender or their race or their like financial background or whatever, which makes complete sense because representation matters so much. And like you said, we look up to people that look like us or stand for things that we believe in or things that we aspire to be when we're older. Have you been following all this Andrew Tate stuff, and about how, like, so the stat says that more boys look up to famous personalities such as YouTubers. This is 57.9% of boys in the world are looking more and more up to YouTubers and like social media influencers for role models in their lives. And there's been this big, like, I guess, epidemic of boys worldwide following people like Andrew Tate, who have been really destructive in a lot of ways to boys, to young boys in particular.
Yeah, obviously very controversial topic.
Because with that, it's different to what we were saying before. It's like, what's the representation that they see in him? Yeah, when it comes to like negative role models, how does that happen?
Yeah, I think about this a lot. Why like boys gravitate towards Andrew Tate? Like, I think it's a really interesting thing to think about. I don't think it's the right thing to demonize. I don't ever think that's a good thing to do. I think it's a better thing to think, why is it happening? Because that will give more answers. And it's a really difficult question. I guess, so what does he the kind of things he talks about is like dominance and overexertion and success and strength and self-belief, kind of. Those are like the kind of things, right? Maybe some to more extreme levels than others, and probably tons of other things I don't really know. So for some reason boys are gravitating towards that, which must mean that they don't feel that in their lives, or they aspire to that in their lives. Why? Maybe it's because they see that he's successful, and to get to that success they see those are the traits that are required, or it's the other way around, that they want those traits and those traits will then lead to success. Like, I don't know which way around it is, but it's very, it's interesting. I don't really know, but I do know that I don't know why he's in jail, but I've heard that obviously I've heard a lot of things kind of saying like he shouldn't be in jail just for being controversial. And obviously if he's done something wrong, that's a different thing. Of course he should be punished for it. But I think this is a thing in our society, everywhere. In Russia, people that are speaking their mind are getting killed, and it's never good, I think, to censor people, and no one should be punished for being controversial. Obviously, you could argue that his impact by affecting all these boys is detrimental, but isn't that just a greater question about social media and the amount of influence we allow one person to have? Like, how can we just go about, banning people here, there, and everywhere? Like, it's just very nitty-picky, I think. Like, I don't know why some people are allowed and some not. Obviously, I know that some people are saying things that are detrimental to human lives, so that's why they're not allowed, but it's just a difficult line, I think. I don't really know.
Yeah. Not so simple. Andrew Tate, but you're right, this rise of cancel culture can be so dangerous because, like you said, like censorship often leads to like an increased fascination into like why is it being banned, especially with young confused adolescents that love a bit of danger and drama. They're going to be even more drawn to these stories and these people if they're silenced. And just with cancel culture in general, I just don't agree with it. I never think the solution is to silence people and to block people, because that cuts the conversation off and probably puts it somewhere where you don't want it to be. Whereas as long as you keep the conversation open, eventually love wins, the truth wins. Like, good always overcomes evil. Yeah. But I think it's just, it doesn't make sense to me. It's okay, this might be controversial to say, but in my mind it's on a similar level to like the death penalty. Like why would you cut off someone's life and not let them like live with the guilt for the rest of their lives, then rather than like teaching them and like learning from them and like forcing them to live with the consequences of their actions? Like, to me that's a way bigger punishment than just being like, bye, you're out.
So you're quite pro like letting things ride their course, and you believe that everything will have its like due process, like the natural conclusion that it should have, and that by cutting that short we almost make it worse. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, I think that's a really interesting perspective, and especially if you kind of just believe that things will work out the way that they should, then that's a good thing to like believe. I guess I don't really know what I believe, to be honest. I won't comment. I don't know, but I like that. That's interesting. That's cool.
I wasn't expecting to talk about the death penalty on this, but I just remember growing up, like obviously not knowing too much about the whole system and still being quite unaware of a lot of it. So far away from home for us, but I always just thought like all that does is punishes everyone around them. Like they get to watch. I mean, I know that that's quite an interesting way of looking at it, but once your life's over, that's it. Like you're not having to deal with the consequences and suffer for the pain and misery you've caused.
But I guess that some would argue that, for example, Andrew Tate being cancelled that's his consequence. His platform that he's worked for is taken away from him, so that's the right thing. Now he has to bear the consequences of thinking about all the videos that he put out and how that affected people, and
But we should know from history that doesn't work. Like it just goes elsewhere. Like he's still managing to reach.
Yeah, the guy's in prison and he's still tweeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
This is kind of a similar mentality, I would say, maybe to like maybe even like the banning of drugs, and how like the second you start cutting things off and forcing people into things, like the more it kind of goes that way. Whereas like through time you learn what's good and bad for you, like as the years go on, and I don't know, I think
Yeah, and it kind of is like a full circle to also the beginning of the conversation about punishing. Like, so if we're going with Gabor Mate's, you know, punishment probably is not the right way, because it'll lead to, you know, trauma and then repression probably further along. So it's an interesting thing to ponder as what we do with adults that we want to punish, and it raises a whole different discussion about the criminal justice system, which can be difficult.
Which we'll save for another day. Stay tuned.
Which is so interesting.
So in conclusion, it's kind of like this idea of leading by example and positivity and was it like positive enforcement?
Try to have compassion for the person next to you, and everyone has so much shit that they've already dealt with that being nice to them is just making everyone's life just that little bit better and helping them heal from their past, and just look through things from a different perspective. Don't try to cancel people if someone is trying to have a conversation with you. If you're at the right space, obviously I believe that space is necessary. Try to invite conversations into your life. Doesn't mean you have to agree, but talking, like you said, and allowing things to due process is a good thing.
Letting things run its course.
Letting things run its course. That's a little jingle.
Another example that I may cut out, but we found out that a friend of a friend was cheating on someone, and everyone's response was to block this person, and everyone just deleted him off of their group, and we never saw him again, and blah blah blah. And I just kept thinking, he's not going to learn from that. But why not, like, you know, explain to him and how much pain that you cause, and make him like suffer and struggle with those responsibilities that and consequences that he should be facing, because then he'll just go and do it somewhere else with the new friends he makes. Like, that's not
that's a good example.
Someone a lesson.
Yeah, it's true. It's difficult, and there's no judgment passed. Again, like, you know, saying if you do that, if you do want to cut someone out that did something horrible to you, it's completely understandable why you would want to do that in the moment, obviously. But it's interesting to think about these long-term implications as a outsider. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, in the moment, if someone did something horrible to you, your first instinct, fight or flight, is get away. But for what's best for that person, you're right. I think you're completely right.
That's really interesting. Fight or flight, like the fact that we can use that like summary to think about all the topics we discussed today. Like, it makes it seem so difficult. Obviously it's not, but
very true.
Very interesting. Very and on that note, I would like to conclude. Oh, I'm sorry. Have we got your attention, Jess?
Yes.
On that note, I would like to conclude today's episode 2. Thank you all for listening. It's been a pleasure. Jess, nice to talk to you.
It's a rare one. Didn't expect some of the topics that you'd bring up. You little.
Oh, I know. I'm full of surprises.
Keep me on my toes. I like it. It's good.
Oh, God. Okay. Thanks for listening, everyone. See you next time.
Ciao.